Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Holevoet, and I'm an engineer on Google's developer relations team, and I'm going to be talking to you today about Google and the social web. And before I really get started here, I'd like to point out that we'll be doing Q&A at the end with Google Moderator. So if you want to click on the first or look at the first link here, this will take you to a moderator page for all of the sessions that we're having at Google I/O that are using Moderator. And the link at the bottom here is an abbreviated link where you can link to this session's specific moderator page. So if you have a question during the talk, you can feel free to enter it there, vote on the other questions that people have posted, and at the end I'll go through a few of those questions if there's time. And you can also feel free to use the mic if you'd rather just ask a question in person. So Google and the social web. There's really two things that I'm going to focus on today. The first one of those is what is Google doing with social? And the second one is how all of you as developers can get in front of the millions of users of Google's products. So let me start out with a quote. The web is better when it's social. This is really the driving motivation behind all the things that we're doing with social in our products. And we really think this is true, not just because the web is better when it's social, but actually most things are better when they're social. And let me demonstrate this with a couple of examples. Things that you might say, well, why is that better when it's social? And hopefully you'll understand the point after I give these examples to you. So the first one is really simple. A clock. Right? It tells me what time it is. It has some marginal utility to me. I can look at it and see what time it is. It lets me know what I should be doing, where I should be, things like that. So how is this better when it's social? Well, let's say instead of just one clock, I have a whole set of clocks for where I am, but also where my friends are. So let's say that I want to talk to Jason about something. And I can see that where Jason is, it's 6 o'clock. And if I want to get in touch with him, he's probably not at work. He's probably on his way home. So maybe I should call his cell phone instead of his desk phone, or maybe I should send him a text message if I need to get in touch with him. Another example, movies. Let's say it's Friday night. I don't really have anything that I want to do, so I go and I try and find a movie that I can watch. And so I go to my favorite movie website, or I go to a video store, and I try and find out something, try and pick out something that I can watch. So I'm presented with these different ratings for popular movies, and I can see that based on these ratings, that Finding Nemo is probably the best choice of movie to rent. But who knows who these ratings are coming from? They could be from the film press. They could be from just every user that has ever been to this movie site. These aren't necessarily meaning to me. They give me one rating, but it's not necessarily indicative of what I would think of the movie. But if we make this more social, and instead of just showing ratings from every random person, we show ratings from my group of friends that I've specified, these people, which probably share common interests with me, will give me a more helpful rating that can be used to determine what I might be interested in. And so based off of this, I can see that my friends would actually recommend The Big Lebowski to me over Finding Nemo. But of course, those same friends, it appears here, have also rated Geely with 4.5 stars. So maybe I should just find different friends. Another example, a stock, right? There's just tons of information out there about stocks. Different indicators on whether you should buy a stock or sell a stock. You have the price, you have the opening, the price, the 52-week high, the market capitalization, how popular it is of a stock to trade. And all this information can be overwhelming. So, theoretically, from an economics perspective, the price here is really indicating what the market thinks about a particular stock. But maybe I don't trust the whole entire market. Maybe I'm worried about manipulation or giant investors driving a particular price. So if I find a specific investment community, for instance, let's say an investment club, so something like the Motley Fool, right? I can go and I can find a specific set of users and look at their particular opinions of a particular stock. And I can use that as another piece of information to help me make a more educated decision. And so you can see here this little bit of change that I made to the stock ticker here. This little extra piece of information is really just sprinkling social data into an existing application to make it better, to let me make a more informed decision. So in the same way that all of these apps are better when they're social, Google's apps are better when they're social. And so you might think, well, Google's not really a social network. Google isn't really social. But actually, in many different ways, it already is. So let's look at a couple examples. So the first one of these, Google Docs, right? I go and I'm editing a spreadsheet. I have different people I want them to contribute data or improve data, so I end up sharing it with them. And they can go and they can edit the same document with me simultaneously. And this collaboration that we're doing, this simultaneous editing and contributing to each other's ideas is social. Or let's say that I'm using Google Reader. I have this whole list of RSS feeds that I've subscribed to, all the things that I've cataloged from the internet, and I can read all of those by myself, or I can flag different things that I think might be interesting to other people that I'm friends with, or I can go like I'm doing here, and I can see a feed of items that other users that are my friends have selected because they think they might be interesting to me, right? And the sharing that we're doing here is social. Or, Google has this whole other suite of products. We have Google Groups, we have Google Talk, we have Gmail, and all of the communication that we're emphasizing in these products is social. YouTube, right? I can log into YouTube, I have an account, I have friends that I've specified on YouTube. When I log in, I can see a feed of activity from all of my friends. I can see what videos they favorited, like Liz here has marked a trailer for one of the other I.O. sessions as one of her favorites. Maybe I should check that out. And she's also tagged this video, which has a totally meaningless title, right, with 5 stars. And if I just look at the title, I would say, well, that's not something I want to watch. That doesn't look like anything interesting at all. But the fact that she rated it at 5 stars means that maybe it's something that's worth checking out. So all of these users that are using Google's products, actually, what they're doing is they're creating an implicit social graph, right? The users that I'm sharing documents with, the users that I'm collaborating with, the videos that I'm sharing, the RSS feeds that I'm sharing, all of these things that we're doing here are creating an implicit social graph. And what we can do as Google to sort of make this implicit social graph better is allow users to explicitly customize it and make it their own, add details to all the nodes on the social graph, add details about themselves. And there's 2 particular tools that we have that allow users to do this. So the first one of those is Google Contacts. A lot of you have seen this before. Maybe you don't know that it's actually a standalone tool by itself, google.com/contacts. And in there, you can edit details on the people you contact. You can add people explicitly. And then here we also have a friends group, and I can add people specifically to that friends group if I want them to be part of my social graph. And then on top of that, we have Google Profiles, which lets you take the individual user, yourself, that uses these Google tools, and then create a persona about that. And that's not just you inside of the Google applications anymore, but it's also you on the internet as a whole, right? So you can give yourself a profile picture, you can edit details about yourself, where you grew up, you can have photos, you can say places that you've lived, all kinds of information that you can make available if you choose to do so. And even more interesting about this is that this profile is then available in search. So you can see here that I've done a search for Lane Leobrotten, and at the bottom of this page here, it has a link to his profile page. And if I click on that profile, I can see all this information about him, anything that he's chosen to make available. So you might say, okay, well, why is Google doing all these things with social? And actually, a good way to think about this is if you've seen Vic's keynote from last year's Google I/O keynote, he talks about the virtuous cycle with the open web platform. Richer web applications bring more users bring more usage, and with more usage, you have more revenue, which feeds back into richer web applications being made available. And so with social, this is just one more avenue that Google can use to make richer web applications. And actually, everyone can make richer web applications by using social. So all these recommendations that we're making can really extend not just to all of Google's products, but everyone else's products as well. So we really think that it's important that you can interact with your friends wherever you are and wherever they are. You shouldn't be locked into a single site, no closed gardens. And you should take advantage of the implicit social graphs that you as a user are naturally creating by using all of these collaborative tools. And the result of this is, as I said, more powerful, more useful applications. So you might be saying to yourself, well, I'm a developer. I am a user of these tools, but first and foremost, I'm a developer of applications, and how do I benefit from all these things that Google is doing with social? There's actually a couple different things that we're really interested in having you do with the social features that we're making available. So we've created this social graph, and what we really want you to do is use it in your own applications, to integrate with our own applications, and to add features to our applications. And there's a couple different technologies that I'll explain to you that allow you to have these opportunities. So the first one of these is OpenSocial, and I bet most of you have probably heard about OpenSocial. It's a set of common APIs for accessing social data. The first one of those is the People API, and that's who you are and who your friends are. There's Activities, which is what you and your friends are doing. And then there's App Data, which is best to think of as sort of a mem cache for your social application, sitting inside of each of these OpenSocial sites. And there's a couple different ways that you can access these APIs. There's JavaScript if you're writing code that sits in the client, and there's the REST and RPC implementations if you want to make calls from your own server to any of the OpenSocial servers. And the newest version of OpenSocial, 0.9, was just released, and I'll be talking a little bit about that in this talk, and others will be talking about it in some of the other talks in the social track here at I/O. So here's just a small sample of the sites that are supporting or have pledged to support OpenSocial. And there's actually quite a few more, and on the OpenSocial wiki, you can actually see a list of all the sites that are working on OpenSocial support right now that have production implementations or sandboxes, or have said that they're working on OpenSocial support. And I'll come back to this a little bit later. So the next technology that can be used to add social to your site is portable contacts. And I like to call this the coolest technology without a logo. It's fully compatible with the OpenSocial Person API. And depending on how you look at it, it's either a subset of OpenSocial or OpenSocial is a superset of portable contacts. And so the best way to illustrate this is with an example here. So I have a mobile application that I wrote here sitting in this Android device. And what this app lets you do is it lets you record basically what you're doing. It's sort of like Twitter, but with your location, and you can see those results on a map, right? But instead of having a special user account for this application, you can log into the app with your MySpace account or your Google account, for instance, and that will take in all of the details from your profile on that account, as well as all of the friends that you have on that account. So when I log into this app, I can see the updates from my friends. If I've logged into my Google account, I can see all the Google friends that have posted updates on the site, or if I log into my MySpace account, I can see all the updates from my MySpace friends on this site. And the way that we're doing this is with portable contacts, we're using three-legged OAuth. So if I click the login box here, it takes me to a page actually on MySpace or on Google where I can enter my password. None of that actually has to go through this application here. You don't have to actually trust this app with those credentials. And then that will return to this application a token that can be used to access my social data. And if you're interested in more about portable contacts, we actually have two talks here at I/O. The first one of those is powering mobile apps with social data, which we'll talk about this example in more detail and some other examples. And then a more generic talk on making your website social, which we'll talk about portable contacts, among other things. So the next technology is Google Friend Connect. Again, you've probably heard about Google Friend Connect. Maybe you're not sure exactly what it does. So again, I'll use an example here. Google Friend Connect lets you take an existing website and add social to it, sometimes in as easy as a couple minutes of copying and pasting code. So this example here is the Earth Hour website. And what it's done here is if you normally visit the site, it's not really social. You can find out information about Earth Hour, various tips on things to do to help the environment, things you can do to honor Earth Hour. But with Friend Connect, you can see a couple different elements that have been added here. The first one of them on the right is a members gadget where I can actually sign in to support the site and then find other members of the same site that have joined. I can click on them, find other sites that they're interested in, maybe meet some new people, make some new friends. And then there's a comments gadget on the left at the bottom where I can post a comment to the site and have that show up to make the experience on the site richer. So this is a very simple integration. Like I said, it's basically cut and paste, but you can actually do a deeper integration as well, fully integrating all of the social data from Google Friend Connect into the inner workings of your website. And so I can only touch on this a little bit here during this talk, but if you're interested in more details on this, we actually have 2 talks, best practices in code and interaction design, which is today, and then deep integrations with Google Friend Connect, which is tomorrow. So let's go back to OpenSocial. And in particular, we're going to focus on 3 Google containers which are supporting OpenSocial. So the first one of those, iGoogle, the second one, Gmail, and then third, Google Calendar, which you may not have heard about supporting OpenSocial until today. So what do these 3 sites have in common? Well, they all have millions of users with a shared focus and demands. They're all Google users. They all expect really fast access to their data. They expect to be able to really quickly update their data and find out lots of information about what they're doing and what their friends are doing. So all 3 of these have a common social graph and social data. The Friends group, which I mentioned before in Google Contacts, is the shared social graph between all 3 of these sites. And the app data, the common memcache that I was talking about before, is shared between application instances on all 3 of these sites. And if you're using the REST and RPC protocols, there's one endpoint that's used for all 3 of these sites. So let's talk a little bit about OpenSocial on each of these. iGoogle, which currently has a sandbox for developers right now, provides home and canvas views. And if you aren't familiar with the term view here, the home view is sort of the traditional view of a gadget inside of iGoogle. It's the smaller view that you can see here on the left. And then the canvas view allows you to actually really deeply drill into information. You can have the control of the entire screen of the iGoogle page just for your one particular application. And you can see you can see lots more data. You have a lot more space to control here, and you can really provide a rich UI to your application by using the canvas view. And for growth of your application, there's 2 features that are supported on iGoogle. There's Request Share App, which allows you to let users invite others to join you using this application. And then there's Updates, which allows you to see what you're doing inside of this particular app. And those are visible to other users of iGoogle as well. So next, Gmail. It provides a nav view, which is sort of like the home view. It's a little bit thinner by default. Sits on the left-hand side of Gmail. And right now it's enabled as a Gmail Labs feature, which maybe you've had a chance to try. Basically, you toggle the Labs feature on, and then it provides a second set of preferences where you can specify which gadgets you want to add to your page. And then finally, Google Calendar, which is in an early preview mode right now for gadgets inside of Calendar, provides the same nav and canvas views as Gmail, except this time the gadgets are sitting on the right. And in addition to that, it actually provides a set of custom API extensions that allow developers to provide interaction between the calendar UI itself and what's happening in the gadget. And I can demonstrate that a little bit later, but a simple example here is the next event gadget, which you can see. And this will take the next event that's on your calendar based off of what time it is, and it will pop that up in the right corner here, and it will also tell you how long it is until that event happens. So the way I like to think about this is the do I have time for lunch gadget. You can see that my next meeting here is in 20 minutes, so it's probably enough time that I can go grab lunch if I really hustle. So since this is the first time that you're actually seeing gadgets in Calendar, let me take a moment to just sort of explain the vision behind these, why they're adding them, and how you can best take advantage of them. So gadgets in Calendar are really about making Calendar extensible. Up until this point, you've had lots of great ways to take data from Google Calendar and put it in other apps, whether they're social or whether they're online or whether they're offline, all kinds of things. But you haven't really had a way to bring those same types of quality apps back into Calendar to provide that deep integration in the Calendar UI. So gadgets in Calendar allow you to do that. And so if you're really excited and you really want to try these out, there's a private whitelist for now, and if you talk to me after, I can take information from you and see if we can get you into the whitelist. But this will be open to all developers that are interested in the relatively near future. And if you want to see more demos of gadgets in Calendar, they're actually for people from the Calendar team in the developer sandbox here at I/O, and you can talk to them for some more details and a closer look at some other example gadgets. So now that I've talked about each of these containers, let me just show here, this is sort of a quick cheat sheet of things that you'd want to do if you're trying to develop a successful application that fits across all three of these sites. So you really want to be able to leverage the social graph. I mean, these are social applications after all. You want to have a quick way to enter data or view data. You want to provide a dashboard view, really take advantage of all the real estate that Canvas View is giving you, and really use the container-specific extensions where they're available, such as the calendar-specific extensions in this particular case. So to demonstrate all of these features, I wrote an example gadget called Quartermile with one of my colleagues, and this is a fitness gadget that allows you to keep track of your workouts by yourself or with a team of other people, sort of spur each other on to exercise more, and you can quickly enter these activities that you're doing. You can view stats on yourself and your teammates. The data entry box that we're providing here is actually smart. Makes it very simple to enter data. And behind all three of these gadgets running in the containers, we have a single App Engine backend, which really handles all the processing and does most of the work for you. So let me actually just jump into a quick demo of this gadget. So here we have the gadget running in iGoogle. You can see it on the left here. And actually, if I just installed this, the first thing that the user would see would be this dialog box, basically asking for permission to use my social data. So let's just assume that I'm OK with that. And then I'm prompted to either create a team to join, or I can actually join one of the existing teams. So let's just join the first one here, the Fitness Nuts team. So I'll click that link. All right, so I'm on the team now. It looks like no one's participated at all today, so let's just say that let's say I ran 1 mile. All right, I'll save that. All right, so Dan H. ran 1 mile on 5/27, and it's doing all the processing of this in the App Engine backend, and I'll explain all this in more detail later. So then let's jump to the next container here, which is Gmail. So I'll just load this in my Gmail tab here. You can see that I have the same gadget installed in Gmail, and it's picked out the team that I'm on already. Again, from the same shared app data, you can see the same activity that I just entered on the previous tab. Let's say that I walked 1 mile. Save this here. Again, this little feed of activities updates itself. And then finally, I'll jump to calendar. And you can see that the gadget here, again, it's loaded the same team, loads the same activities. A couple other activities, which I'll explain to you in a little bit. And then finally, let's say I swam 1 mile. Really getting my exercise today. We'll save this, and then we'll jump back to the Gmail tab. Sort of completing the cycle here, you can see the same data is loaded across all three of these containers. Same identity, same team name, same app data. Everything is being shared across these 3 sites. So this is a really quick look, and I'll explain how all this is working in just a minute. So the architecture of this is pretty straightforward. We have the 3 sites. They're all pointing to the same shared container of app data, right, represented on the left, my social graph, and the app data APIs being shared there. And to communicate with the App Engine backend, the gadget in each of these containers is sending what we call a signed make request, which basically proves the origin of the request so that the backend knows where it's coming from and knows what data to return. And then the App Engine backend is sending a JavaScript object back to the gadget, which can then be used to render data in the UI. So let's go through each of the features that we're really interested in here. So the first one, leveraging the social graph. So you'll notice before that when I first loaded the gadget, I was prompted to either create a team or join an existing team. And so how this is social is when I first load the gadget actually makes a request for all of my friends and all of the teams that my friends are on. And based off of that, I can send that request to the backend and return a set of interesting teams based off of the ones that my friends have already joined. So we first load the gadget here. This is a first look at the JavaScript code in the 0.9. This is the OSAPI or OS Lite version of the API here. And we can see that I'm generating a new batch request and adding to that requests for the viewer information, that would be me, and the information on my friends here, which is the group of friends of the viewer. And so once I make this request, I can execute it. This is implemented asynchronously, so I specify a callback function that handles this data once it's returned. And then let me show you what happens with that data next. So actually first, if you've used 0.8 before, this is actually what the equivalent code would look like. It's a little bit more verbose. It's not as nice. It's not as nicely formatted. Just in general, it's not quite as polished as 0.9. So just flipping back, this is nice and concise, relatively straightforward. You can pretty much understand what this is doing here based off of the code itself. So once I have this list of viewer friends and the teams that they're on, I can take those lists of teams and pass that to the App Engine backend by using a make request here, also known as http.post. And you can see that I'm specifying a server, which is, again, the URL of the server. And then the body of the request is actually some more JSON. Here, I'm passing in a method, getInterestingTeams, with the array of IDs that I'm really interested in. And then I pass in a callback function to deal with the data when it gets returned. So on the App Engine backend, what this is simply doing is taking this list of IDs that I've specified, doing a query for the team details for each of those, and then sort of populating the rest of the list with other teams that are popular, even if they're not the ones that my friends are on, but just ones that I might be interested in joining because they're very full or there's a lot of activity. And once I have that, I return the set of both of those, the teams from my friends and the other teams that might be interesting to the client, and render all of that data using jQuery here. And this is actually an abbreviated version. I do a couple other things with it. I add some on-click handlers that make these actually links that do something when I click on them so that I can actually join the team. So this code that I just showed you, sending the code to the App Engine backend, fetching the list of my friends, all of this data is actually shared between all three of these containers, and so the code for all three of these containers is identical. So the fact that I've implemented this little bit of logic for joining a team inside of iGoogle, I've actually implemented it inside of Gmail and Calendar as well. And the code works completely identically across all three of these. And so if I'd shown Gmail first and how to join a team there, that would have worked exactly the same way as it did when I was on my iGoogle page. So the next thing that we'll tackle here is quickly entering data. So you saw before that I ran 1 mile into the box here. So you might say, well, what's happening with that data? How is it coming back with a response here? And it's actually relatively simple. It's very close to what I was doing before to get the list of interesting teams. I'm basically taking that text just as it is, sending another request, this time with the create activity method that we specified in the App Engine code, and passing along the text. And then I'm doing another http.post to the same URL and specifying a different callback function to actually render the list of all of the activities from the current time period, which now includes the one that I just sent. So again, relatively straightforward. All this code is shared between iGoogle, Gmail, and Calendar. And when I implement this one feature in one place, I've actually implemented it in all three places. So the next one, the dashboard view. Actually, I'll switch into a demo here because a lot of people haven't seen the dashboard view inside of Gmail. And I think the reason for that is because in the iGoogle page, the canvas view is accessible by clicking either on this link or clicking on the link to the gadget in the left navigation bar. But in Gmail and Calendar, there isn't actually a little UI hint for doing the same behavior. So it's up to the gadget authors to add the ability to switch into the canvas view if their application takes advantage of it. So you can see here this more link that I've added below the activities allows me to get more details basically on what the user is doing and what the user's team is doing. So if I click on this, you can see here it takes advantage of this larger pane, the conversation pane of Gmail. And I'll let this load. And so you can see here, I have the full list of activities by day. And actually, if I go to the last week of activities, you can see the ones that I've done today and also the ones that were done on the 25th and the 24th and the 22nd by other members of my team. And so there's actually two things that we're doing here. One is the code to switch into the canvas view, and then the second one here is actually the code to render this nice chart. And I'll explain both of these. The first one is actually relatively simple. To navigate to the canvas, you actually just make the request navigate to call and specify the view that you're interested in navigating to. If I had instead already been in the canvas view and I wanted to navigate back to the home view or the nav view, I could replace this with the home or nav view string instead, and it would work identically. And the reason that this is called request navigate to and not just navigate to is because some containers may not support all the different types of views, and might be particular or might want it to be up to the user whether or not the application can choose to make this navigation. So a possible thing that could happen here is the container would say, well, let me pop up a little dialog box and make sure that the user is okay with doing this navigation before it actually occurs. And so the other bit that you saw was the chart, which is actually done using the Google Visualization API. This is any type, similar to any other type of web resource. Anything else that I could do in an HTML or JavaScript page, I can do inside of these open social gadgets. So here I'm calling the Visualization API. I'm using the Google Common Loader for loading this code. None of this has to do with open social at all. I'm just using it as a component of my gadget, and this could just as easily be a Flash page or a static image that I'm loading here. And so I can't really get into all the details about Google Visualization API, but if you're interested in this, there's actually two talks today and tomorrow on how to use the Visualization API with Google Web Toolkit, and then tomorrow for implementing your own visualization data source. And I'd encourage you to check that out if you're interested in this API. So again, the same dashboard view that we've created can be shared between all the sites that are have a canvas view, which is actually all three of these, and I'll show you in just a minute how that would look in Calendar. But let's talk first about the container-specific APIs that we have available to us, which in this case are the Google.Calendar API extensions I showed you before. So when I first loaded the gadget in Calendar, you might have noticed that the list of team activities that I had available to me was actually a little bit longer than the ones that were being displayed in the iGoogle and Gmail views. And the reason for that is because when the user loads the calendar page, there's this nice UI around showing different time spans. So the default view that I have on my page here shows me the last week of my calendar, right? Or I could very easily switch to the last day of my calendar or have a full month view, right? So it would be really cool if this gadget, which is showing me recent activity from my team, had some way to tie into this ability that's in the calendar UI. So actually, using one of the API extensions, it does. So here, I have week selected, and it's showing me all of the activities that have happened during this week. And if I switch to just day, it shows me all of the activities from just this day. And if I switch to month, it will show me the full list of activities that have happened during the last month. And this is actually pretty powerful and I think pretty cool. And so the way that we're doing this is by using the subscribe to dates method, which is part of the calendar API. And what this takes here is a callback method. And so whenever the user decides to change the range of dates that is being viewed in the calendar UI, that will fire off a message to my gadget. Here, in this case, it's the change date view, which will pass in a range of time that I have now selected. So in the case of the week, the start time is the first day of the week, and the end time is the last day of that week. And what I'm doing in the gadget is saving those values as sort of the internal representation of the time, and then I'm updating the list of activities that I'm displaying based off of these two new values. So let's just show you that one more time here. Switching back and forth between the days updates the list of activities. And since I promised you the calendar canvas view here, this is what that looks like as well. So at this point, we've actually created a fairly functional gadget that works across all three of these containers, right? So you might say, well, okay, well, how do we get users for these apps? Like, how does a gadget on all these sites become popular? So there's actually a couple different suggestions that we can make that apply to these specific sites, but also other open social containers and other open social sites. So the first thing that you'd want to do is you want to submit to the containers directory. So in this case, iGoogle is the only one of these that has a existing directory, but it's also the only one that has launched gadget support in production at this moment. So it would make sense if directories came for the other two containers at some point in the future. So you'd want to make sure you submit to that directory. Inside of the application, you'd really want to take advantage of the organic growth channels that are available to your app. So inside of Quartermile, we'd really want to use request share app, maybe to invite other people that we're friends with to sort of join our team or to install the gadget on their own, and then take advantage of updates so that, if you have a particularly strong workout or your team's doing really well for the week, you can advertise that to other people that are in your social graph so that they can see what you're doing and perhaps become engaged with the application as well. Another interesting possibility here is actually the idea of cross-promotion. So this one application runs across all three of these sites and might find itself onto the page of one of those applications for a specific person. But you can take advantage of that and say, well, it looks like you are an iGoogle user, but you know that you can also run this gadget inside of Gmail. And you can point that a link there that suggests to the user that they go install it on their Gmail page or their calendar page. So then that user, whatever app they happen to be in, always has quick access to update their activities, find out more information on what their friends are doing, and that information is always available to them. And then the final option here is that you can advertise. There's just tons of ways you can do this. You can advertise inside of other social applications and other gadgets. You can use ads and search, all kinds of things you can do here. The possibilities are pretty huge, and I won't get into all those details. So the next really cool step is that you have this application. It's running inside of these three sites. It's become popular. What's the next step? Well, it turns out that these three sites, right, are only the tip of the iceberg here. You can actually take this one application using the shared backend that we've set up here and use that to drive an application across all of these sites and all of the other sites that are supporting open social. And in addition to that, you can actually create a mobile application, for instance, that talks to your App Engine backend. And maybe it uses portable contacts to pull in the social data of the user. Or maybe you have a standalone website. Maybe it's using Google Friend Connect, for instance, that has, again, access to the same App Engine backend, social graph being provided by, again, someone else. It doesn't really matter, just anyone else that can be integrated inside of your application. And this is all relatively simple and straightforward to do. So with that said, I've touched on quite a few different things that you can be doing. Lots of different ways you can use social, lots of different ways Google is using social. And if you're interested in more about any of these particular topics, we actually have a whole bunch of other talks that you can attend at I/O. And in particular, you've seen some of these titles before and the times before, but let me mention a couple other ones. We have today designing open social apps for speed and scale right after this talk, and that actually uses the Quartermile Gadget and explains how we designed it to make it fast and to scale really easily with lots of users. And then tomorrow we have building a business with social apps. So if you've created an application like Quartermile and you're really interested in how you could use that to create a business, then you should attend that talk, and it'll find out more details on how you can actually make money with these things. So with that said, I'm here to answer questions if you have them available, and I don't know if anyone has used Moderator here to enter questions. I'll switch over to that in just a second. But here's the link, and if anyone wants to ask a question on the mic, they can feel free to do so. Thank you, everyone.
ask a question then?
Sure.
The Gmail integration with gadgets. Right now you have to go to Gmail Labs, add a gadget thing to the URL. Is that something that you guys have on the roadmap, that you could have a one button, add my gadget to Gmail?
Right.
It seems really hard to get a user to go through
Right.
that.
So I wouldn't expect that that's the final UI. I don't know specifically what's on the roadmap for how the integration would work there, but I wouldn't expect that to be the final way to add a gadget to Gmail. I mean, as you said, it's fairly complicated.
Right. So that will change fairly soon. The other thing is there a way to customize, like on the invite screens, for if you want to share something? Do you know what I'm talking about? So friend connect, and now you're using an invite from a user to invite his other contacts?
Right. So, for instance, inside of the request share app inside of iGoogle, when the user or when the developer makes that API call, they can pass in a list of suggestions to the container, like I would like to invite all of this user's friends, or these specific users that have already been identified by my app as potential users. But then the container will actually provide its own interface for selecting people. So if I want to say, well, I'm going to override the application's decision and only invite these people, I can check them myself and invite them basically, with my own action.
So we've been using so that they can select their contacts, and then it creates an invite.
Right.
We've been stuck a little bit on how to fully customize that invite email. And is the key to that using a custom canvas? Or am I getting ahead?
So request your app. Let me see if I can pull up a demo really quickly here. Let's see. I don't know if I know one off the top of my head. But basically, request your app. When you make the actual JavaScript call, it's just a single line, and when the container receives that request, it will pop up a UI for doing the actual invitation. And depending on the different containers, that might be completely controlled by the container, or you might have some options to customize that. So the primary thing you'd want to do would be to customize the title and the message of the request your app, and you can actually control that in iGoogle so that it would say, I'd like to share this application with you, or I think you'd find this cool, or here's this, particular element of something that I'd like to share with you, that type of behavior. So
Great, so that should be customizable already, the URL. It doesn't have to go to one set sort of landing page, but we can take them to a particular thing. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure I completely understand.
Maybe it's too specific for now.
We can talk more after.
Totally. Thank you.
How do you keep Google Gadgets secure? Do you guys use something like Kaha and all of your open social containers? And do you restrict the JavaScript functionality at all?
So we're not actually using Kaha in any of the current implementations, but we are looking at Kaha. And so primary security measures right now are based on the fact that all of these gadgets are running inside, all the social gadgets are running inside of an iframe. And they're running on a separate domain from Google. They don't have access to your Google cookies or anything like that.
What was the reason behind not adopting Kaha, since it's a Google initiative?
We're not saying that we won't ever adopt Kaha. Just we want to make sure that the experience for developers is as compatible as possible. I think the early versions have a lot of incompatibilities with specific JavaScript frameworks, for instance, and so we'd want it to be a nice, smooth experience to actually integrate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Switch over to the moderator questions. So the first one, what is Google doing to aggregate all of these social events into an actionable, searchable, and pluggable service available to users in their moment of need? So I would expect that this question is focusing primarily on the activity streams or updates. The actual questioner here, maybe for clarification, or I can just answer based off of that. There's a couple things that developers can do with the activity stream. So the first thing is when they actually have a gadget running inside of these open social containers, they can use the activity stream API or the updates API, depending on where specifically it's being referenced, to say what the user is doing. And then these updates will be presented inside of the UI in each of these containers. But outside of the containers, there's access to these activities through the REST and RPC protocols, which unfortunately isn't as widely supported as we would like across all of these different open social properties. But at some point, the idea is that you have access to an activity stream of your network of your choosing, basically at any point, wherever you are, through these APIs. And developers can write applications that basically provide the service that's being asked for here, I think. How does the site capitalize on the social graphs in apps like LinkedIn, Facebook, Plaxo, et cetera? Portable contacts, importing, exporting of social graphs doesn't seem like the right answer. Is there another mechanism, for example, Friend Connect? So maybe I didn't explain this as well as I could have, but what you're actually doing with the social graph in portable context, I mean, yes, you are importing it basically from one of these other social networks, but you can actually use that as you would expect to do if you were, say, running directly in a site like LinkedIn. So if I'm using portable contacts and I'm importing all the user's social graph from LinkedIn, I have a set of IDs. I have a set of IDs for the users that are friends with the viewer. And basically, I don't really have any more of a distinction between that data and the data that I would get if I actually use the JavaScript API inside of a gadget inside of LinkedIn. So it's actually fairly seamless. And I can talk to you a little bit more after the talk, maybe demonstrate using the portable context sample that I demonstrated about how simple this is. And I mean, for Friend Connect, you can, if you're just interested in adding social to your site, you can use Friend Connect, but it's not exactly just importing the social graph as you're explaining here into another site. It's slightly more complicated. And again, maybe it would be best to talk about this in more detail after. How do I extend the graph of the open social person or handle grouping a person, my friends, my Java friends, my Xbox friends? Is this handled by Open Social API? So right now there is the concept of a group inside of the Open Social API, and I think I can flip back through the slides here. When I'm requesting a list of friends, right, so you can see here that I'm requesting information about the viewer, and then the specific group that I'm interested in here is the friends group. So in place of friends, the API would let me specify something such as, family or, the arbitrary group that it is that you've defined. And right now, the actual implementations of these are sort of limited by the specific container. So for instance, on iGoogle, I couldn't say, let's request the family group, but the API is making that available to us. And at some point, it should be possible to specify an arbitrary group instead of just the friends. How can newspapers use social to increase revenue? That might be a better question to ask Eric Schmidt and not me. He's the newspaper expert. But, I mean, I can think of a couple examples of relatively popular gadgets that are running in iGoogle that are operated by popular newspapers. And I think a really good thing to do is sort of follow the model set by Reader to allow users to take articles that they find interesting and share them with their friends. It's providing a richer web experience, which is getting you more users, and I think you can follow the rest of that cycle to the revenue conclusion. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, yeah.
I guess I'm very new to this social stuff. A basic question. What does it take for a website to become compatible with all of these gadgets? In other words, if I want to turn my site and make it a container for, make it social, open social compatible.
Right. So you have a couple different choices, and it depends on the type of integration that you want, the type of user experience that you want, and the type of applications that you want to run. So if you were to think of sort of like a long tail graph here, a lot of the popular social networking websites, the sites that already have large social graphs pre-built, can use something like Shindig to actually take control of the gadget rendering process and mix that in with the social data that they already have collected. So basically, if I have a database of users and their friends, I can tie that into Shindig and use that to render open social gadgets. And Shindig is an open source project. It's part of the, or it's open source through the Apache Foundation, and you're free to download that and customize it and install it on your site. Another thing that you can do is use Friend Connect. And as I was saying before, there's really two paths that you can do here. You can just install Friend Connect with the sort of simple copy-paste integration, and then a user can then join your website and sign in with an account from various different sites, and you can install open social gadgets through that. And if you're interested in doing a deeper integration, where you really want to integrate all the pieces of open social into your application that you already have available, you can mix the different parts of the API in with the code that you already have running. And like I was saying before, we have 2 talks on if you're interested in doing that, and I can talk to you more about a Shindig integration if you think that might be something you'd be interested in looking at. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoy the rest of I.O.